There is no getting around the fact that architectural photography lives in a niche. Most of us who specialize in this genre honed our skills in silos, not speaking with one another until we had established ourselves somewhat. My guests today are working to change that. Architectural photographers Sebastian Zachariah and Kunal Bhatia are the founders of the Society of Architecture and Interior Photography India, or SAIP. Sebastian and Kunal, along with other members, have worked hard to identify as many people as possible who work in this field and bring them under one roof to talk about issues that specifically affect us. And now that systems and frameworks are in place, they're looking to invite more people to join in and build a strong community for established pros and young photographers alike. I just wanted to let you know that the Everything Comes Together podcast has a new home online. At everythingcomestogether.com, you can watch full episodes to get the whole story, or you can watch a treasure trove of playlists. On these playlists, a variety of creators from across the country present their experiences and opinions on a set of topics to give you a complete understanding of the work you love. Find out more at everythingcomestogether.com. Sebastian and Kunal, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you both with us. I think this is a pretty important, this is an important initiative that both of you have started, so I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you for having us.
Could we start with you telling us how you guys met before you started doing everything on SAIP?
So we met back in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. So I come from a background in architecture and I was working in a design firm and I was always interested in photography. So while I had started shooting a couple of my own projects already, I wanted to know what it is like to work as a full-time architectural photographer and run a studio. So that's when I had approached Sebastian to work with him as an assistant. And so I was working with PHX for a period of about 6 months.
When I spoke to you guys earlier, I never realized that both of you had actually worked together and that was how you guys met. Could you just talk a little bit about how you both got started in architectural photography? How long have you been in the industry so far?
I have been in this for almost 20 years now. Started in year 2000 and it was a single one-man show at that point. And in around 2010, I started taking interns who were then there with me, who were more serious into photography. In 2015 is when I became a firm with Ira Gosalia as my partner. And today that's the journey that is going on. So it's almost 20 years.
And what about you, Kunal?
I've been doing part-time architectural photography along with design work for about 8-9 years now. But a full-time architectural and interior photography, I would say, for about 5 years now. Although I still continue to balance it with writing work and travel photography and other things.
That's interesting. What do you write about?
So a lot of my writing work tends to be about travel and also about architecture, but for non-architectural audience. So it's architecture, design, monuments, heritage, history for the layman.
Well, that's really nice. Do you write a blog or do you write for publications?
No, so I write for publications. I write for magazines like corporate magazines, in-flight magazines, and also some newspapers. And they usually are in the travel or architectural genres.
Sreenag, I must add something here. Kunal has been good in anything that he does. I mean, be it an assistant, be it a photographer, be it a writer, and even in SAIP, I mean, he is good in whatever he chooses to do.
That's absolutely the biggest vote of confidence you could get, Kunal.
Thank you for that.
So, since you've just brought up SAIP, let's just jump into it. Architectural photography, as we know, is a really tiny niche of our industry. So how did you guys come up with the concept of actually pulling all architectural photographers together and bring them under one roof? How did you actually go about it?
So, when the lockdowns of 2020 just began with coronavirus hitting India, that's when I started this with a Facebook group. And I had always wanted a place where different architectural photographers across the country could come and network and chat with each other and that would be a space only for architecture and interior photographers to discuss parts of the profession that are otherwise not possible to discuss elsewhere. So this was sometime in April 2020 where a private Facebook group began with a few members being added in every now and then based on people I knew and who knew, etc. And from there, Sebastian and me got talking. We realized there's a big vacuum in terms of there being an association or there being a body that represents our collective voice. And that was the germ of an idea that led to SAIP as it is being formed today.
So on this Facebook group, what were the topics that seemed to come up?
So it was very fundamentally about things like how do you deal with clients, how do you price your work, how do you, what sort of paperwork do you need, how do you deal with copyrights, licensing. That's one aspect. And then another aspect would be questions about gear, about shooting, etc. So the idea of the Facebook group was not to just dump your own photos and expect other people to critique it, but to actually ask specific questions so as to get specific responses and generate conversations around that. But that, as I said, it began as a private Facebook group, but once Sebastian and me got talking about this, and maybe Sebastian can elaborate, we realized there's so much more potential about what a group or an association or a body of photographers like this could be. And it will be something that is out in the public eye. It's not definitely private in all its aspects. And that's how, once we slowly got it talking, we decided to reach out to other photographers as well and bring interested people together to form this society.
So it looks like the sort of topics that that the people were talking about were things that you wouldn't normally learn in college, which is the business side of the photography business. So that's generally what you guys were talking about.
Yeah, that's one aspect of it. But let Sebastian elaborate on this. There's a lot more stuff. I mean, for coming together as a network of professionals. Because all of us have such different approaches to our own craft, and there's so much that we have that we can learn from each other. So I'm going to let Sebastian speak a little more about this.
So basically, when Kunal was putting up that Facebook group, and I was invited to be a part of that as well. So I read the same things there. You know, the problems were common, and we discussed that when we are going through the problems and giving solutions to some of the youngsters, it was to a very small group. So I think that's when the whole question to really, bring it out in the public domain and take it to a larger platform really came about.
See, this sounds very impressive to bring people together from all over the country. It sounds like quite a big task, and it's definitely an achievement that you deserve credit for. Sebastian, could you just tell us a little bit about how you actually rounded up so many people and brought them in? Well,
you knew each and every photographer by their work, and sometimes you did not even see their photograph. You did not even know how they look like. Take a simple example like Bharat Ramamurtham and myself. We were on the same city, almost sometimes on the same site, and we never said hello to each other ever in the last 20 years that we are in the business. And why was that happening? I was always wondering why. Maybe sometimes you get too carried away in your own little profession, in your little world, that you do not realize there is so much to share and so much to really celebrate. And so that when the idea of SAIP actually came out about getting these photographers together and sharing a platform, sharing knowledge, etc., I think I was all for it. And the lockdown seemed to have kind of been the right moment. You have nothing else to do and you want to spend your time well. So we just started calling up people. I mean, the friends I knew, the people I knew as photographers whose numbers I had, said hello once in a while, and started with, some of the common friends that me and Kunal shared. And we spoke to them, and everybody seemed to be absolutely waiting for it. They think, why was this not thought of earlier? But yeah, there were earlier instances where societies were formed and it did not work. So I heard and understood all those problems. And I decided, like, if we ever do it, we should do it in a different way, in a much more sustainable idea. And that's how this whole thing came. And one phone number after another, one message after another. And we had a list of almost 20 people in the WhatsApp immediately.
So it's all about reaching out to people one-on-one, and that's a lot of work. It's not even like you could put out and make an announcement to invite people in. So it's quite a lot, yeah?
the next 20, after the first 20, the next 20 came from the 20 themselves, right? So everybody started spreading the word, and that's when we started really having our serious meeting. We had our first Zoom meeting where all these 12, 20, 12, 15 people shared their point of views, that it has to be a professional body, it has to be, something that, works for the photographers. And so I think we developed from that point on, and then we decided to build the constitution ground up, because there was no such thing that was existing in the Indian context. So we built the constitution from the ground up, and then we formed the board, and now we are here.
So it seems to me like also while you've been bringing all these people in, you've been making a conscious effort to bring in people from different parts of the country. Could you elaborate a little bit on the demographics of where the photographers seem to be coming from to be a part of this group?
From whatever we understood, the larger chunk of photographers that really came in the first round were all from Bombay and Gujarat. That's where the action seems to be, and we could get a lot of people who were ready to join in, and suddenly it seemed like it's a Gujarat and Bombay kind of a setup. And there was one very clear understanding here. If you're forming a society or a body, if it is not all India basis, you really do not have that much of a credibility to push things forward in the long run. So I was very clear about it, and we spoke to Kunal and I decided that let's do it from a national perspective. And that's when we decided, okay, how do we break this up? And we reached out to photographers in the south. You were one of them. And then we reached out to photographers in the north, and we discovered that the large chunk is anyway from the west, that is Bombay and Gujarat. And there was nobody from the east. So we decided then to form the zones and try and get equal people coming in from different zones to form the society, the board. So then the decision making is like, affecting everybody across the country.
Okay. Sebastian, we'll circle back to this in a couple of minutes. Kunal, could you just tell people about what the agenda of the society is supposed to be and what we as a group hope to achieve?
Sure. So what I would say to that is that the foremost, we want to create a community. And this is a society not just for photographers, but primarily for photographers and videographers who document spaces. When I say create a community, what I mean by that is, very often we know of another photographer, as Sebastian mentioned, by their work, and they may be based in another part of the country. But it has so happened that we may have never had a chance to communicate with them. We're also not sure how somebody else will react to reaching out for whatever purpose it might be. But when you create a platform like this, where we encourage people to talk to each other, to ask questions with each other, to discuss things with each other, because at the end of the day, we are practicing broadly the same craft in the same genre, and there is so many things that we can learn from each other, because despite it being the same genre and the same craft, our approaches might be so very different, right? And this might be creative approaches that are very different. How person shoots from that might vary from person to person. How they approach the business aspect of running their studio, how they approach the technical aspects of editing their work. And so far, there was no platform for all these ideas to be freely discussed, because people might have also, even though they might have wanted to share or be open to talking about these freely, there was never a space for them to do so. So the first idea of SAIP is to create this community, is to create a space for people to have these discussions with each other. And secondly, as I said, although it's primarily a society of photographers, it's definitely by no means exclusive to photographers. So we do invite people who are in other disciplines that are related to spaces. So that could be architects and interior designers, that could be students, that could be people associated with, let's say, imaging companies, so camera companies, equipment related companies, with vendors, etc. We can get into the types of memberships that we have. And we aim to do a whole lot of events and activities that cater to our members as well as to the public at large. So those are some of the core objectives and purpose behind setting up SAIP. And then going forward, once we have these initial things in place, we do have some goals which one could probably term as lofty, but I'll share some of them nonetheless. So for instance, we want to establish a set of best practices and standards that all creatives practicing this discipline could be encouraged and free to adopt. We might want to establish support services in the long run. These could be legal support services, these could be technical support services, something that all of us could benefit from because there's a pool of such resources.
Sebastian, at this point, I just wanted to ask you one thing. You were very clear about having one very specific objective for the society and its functioning as a whole. Could you just elaborate a bit on that?
My past experience with societies and such bodies where people get together was that there is nothing happening there. People don't do anything. And that is only and only because we suddenly kind of have this thing about putting a name there right in front. Like, oh, this guy is a big photographer, he is a big name, so we need to put him there. But also realize that each of us who are there as a part of the society are busy. We are working professionals, and the whole reason why the society will fail is because there is a beautiful constituted body with very, very talented people, but they are doing nothing. The only way that I could think of was to involve the wide variety of people and a larger gamut of activities. And that's where I decided, we need to speak about this a little more strongly. And I got Kunal on board to understand this idea with me very, very nicely. And he agreed right away, because it was very clear that, we can be whatever we want in terms of names and titles, but unless and until some work happens, it's not going to move. Secondly, we cannot be a city-centric, urban-centric society, because photography really touches right across the board. So across the geography and across the grades, we had to kind of figure out something that will mean something to everybody. So the whole idea, what Kunal explained also, was that interior architecture touches a certain set of people, be it an architect, be it a designer, like he said, be it technicians, be it stylists, be it videographers. So we decided to involve all of them, in which, where we share the same idea of interior architecture, be it documentation, art, photography, even producing it. So why not have a community that is really slightly wider in circle? And because it's wider in circle, we probably can get a lot of people involved, and somebody or the other will keep doing something or the other, and there will be activity within the society. As opposed to 10 photographers sitting and chatting, it doesn't make any sense. So that was the approach, and then we decided to ensure that we have the person right from Kerala to Kashmir involved in it in some form or the other. And also to make sense geographically, we decided to form zones. So each zone then would have their own little activities in the future, which means they are geographically able to reach out to each other, meet them, do activities together. So these are some of the fundamental ideas that we worked on.
So now that you're talking about having a zone system for the society and its functioning, it sounds like you're trying to put together a democratic system in place.
Absolutely. So there are 3 governors who are elected from each of the zones. So from the South Zone, the South Zone members will elect 3 people. The same with the North, the same with the West. Unfortunately, we do not have photographers who are registered from the East. There seems to be not a single name that has cropped up, so we would like to reach out to anybody there. So given that scenario, we have the 3 zones that are working, three members who are governors into the board, and these 3 members collectively get together to form the board, and then they take decisions. So each of them also keep in mind the interest of their zones. So that's very democratic.
Right. This sounds like a good system to put into place, because every photographer would have different issues that need to be addressed, and breaking things up into zones makes it easier to manage finding solutions to individual problems. Sebastian, there's just one more thing. Since you said that the East Zone, we don't have any photographers who are a part of the society. You have a little bit of experience dealing with such a situation and helping develop a certain area's photography potential. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, this I can tell from a very personal experience. When you take architectural photography, the amount of experience you have trying to do a variety of sites and learn from each of them, and then you become what is called as a person who can deal with anything in interior architecture. You develop a style, and then it becomes more popular. Now, when you start working in a small town, take for example 10-15 years ago when I first went to Ahmedabad, So I asked, okay, who are the photographers, just in case I need to connect with them. There was no name. Nobody gave me a name. There was just one guy whom I knew was working there, and others were like really old, and they were like, not really practicing too much. I wondered, in a city like Ahmedabad, where architectural culture is very strong with so many things going on, why are there not too many photographers? And it always seemed like, okay, the photographers need to travel from either Bombay or from Delhi to capture projects in Ahmedabad. Now, fast forward 15 years later, I think a large chunk of numbers that are following on the SAIP membership is from Ahmedabad. And the same thing happened in Surat. And today we have photographers who are based in Surat, who are there because the market is demanding it, and now we have talents who have come to Bombay, interned in Bombay, studied in Delhi, whatever, and they've gone back to their hometowns, and now the work is happening on that level, which is, I think, a very good thing for architectural photography, because there is a cost. You have to understand, there is a cost for photographers to travel, to stay, and to develop and to do work. So when it is local, things can get done faster. Price factor matters.
So this is very good to hear. And apart from the East Zone, it's also clear that most of the photographers are from the bigger cities of whichever state they're a part of. Is there going to be any effort put in to bring in people from smaller towns and maybe even from some of the smaller villages and so on?
We can. Raipur was once a city that happened in the last 3 to 4 years. So I used to go to shoot in Raipur, and after this year during the lockdown, I got about 6 interns who are from Raipur who wanted to apply as interior architecture photographers. So wherever the city starts coming out in the public domain, into the media, where they see work from that particular city being shown in the national media or on Instagram very frequently, you have people who from that city getting inspired to take up the profession. So Calcutta has been good. I mean, Calcutta has been nice. And whenever I ask for a name of a photographer, there is a couple of names that come from either Bombay or from Delhi, but they haven't given out a name from their own city. And it bothers me, because it's a big city. It's one of the major metros. So we hope that as SAIP we can kind of discuss this with students and people over there who are willing to take it up and create a market.
Yeah, so a lot more knowledge sharing and generally just reaching out to people there.
Knowledge sharing is the primary focus, yeah.
So apart from reaching out to people in areas that aren't very well represented, there's one more demographic that I feel needs more attention. And that is, if you look at the number of architectural photographers who are part of our community, it's heavily skewed towards men rather than women. Obviously, I think we can do more to reach out to people, both boys and girls, and try and help them understand what is possible. Because I get a lot of questions, requests, messages, emails from students, both boys and girls, who want to know about architectural photography, and I'm sure you guys do as well. Kunal, could you just talk a little bit about how we can help welcome in more people and make a more diverse community for us to be a part of?
Yes, so what you mentioned about the women bit and the female participation bit is definitely very important. And as I mentioned, as a society, we definitely want to be very inclusive to photographers across genders and across the country as well. For our part, what we have tried to do is try to encourage as many women to occupy key leadership roles within the society itself. So, for example, we have a woman on the board, on the governing board of SAIP. We also have some women who are heading key subcommittees and making decisions about different aspects of the society and its functioning. We have also tried to have them present their journeys and their works in the events that we do. So, for example, the first 10 by 10 event had female participation as well. I guess what as a society we can offer the best is a platform for not just current women architectural interior photographers who can of course showcase their work and their journey, but also for those who are more interested in it, who are maybe students who are perhaps passionate about the topic but are unsure about the feasibility of going forward and pursuing this as a profession. Perhaps seeing the works of established female photographers will encourage them and inspire them to take up architectural and interior photography for themselves going ahead.
Yeah, I think that's pretty great. And in I think 2 or 3 of the events that SAIP has already hosted, I think quite a few women have participated, and it's good that everybody has a platform that they can present their work on. And as you said, women in leadership roles will help bring in more, and that's good. Sebastian, your partner is a woman, Ira, at PHX, and obviously you guys are doing very well as a team, and Ira's work is really good and it speaks for itself. I would like to eventually bring in the other female members of our group so that they can speak for themselves about the issues that they've been facing in the photography community, either from the client side or from other photographers itself. But could you just, since Ira is not here today, could you just talk a little bit about the challenges, the practical challenges that you guys faced along the way?
I think women face what is called as a traditional challenge about their role, in any profession which requires a bit of travel. They talk about safety. The priorities about a woman at a certain age needs to get married, settle down. Will her in-laws allow her to travel? So, we've been through all this. Ira today is what I would call it as an example for a lot of young women who follow that example and say, I would like to be a photographer. What you have done with Ira is fantastic, etc., etc. But Ira has been strong as a person too. Because I can tell you that after a point, the gender really doesn't matter when you're working. You have to take on the same challenges and you have to deliver the same kind of results, because that's exactly what will matter. But even today, there are enough clients who think that Ira should not shoot architecture and should shoot only interiors, and Sebastian should come for architectural shoots. Which I do not understand how, because she is pretty much, I believe that she's more talented than I am, because she looks at it much more, deeply. She's more passionate about photography as a subject. But this is still a bias in 2020. So we have a long way to go, definitely, yes. And empowering these women, putting them out in the front. And yes, definitely what you are doing in terms of, getting them to speak about their journey is the only way forward.
Absolutely, Sebastian. Now, Kunal, you touched upon this a little earlier when you were talking about the types of members that could be a part of SAIP. Could you just elaborate properly on who are all the various people who would be eligible to be a part of the society?
We are definitely open to and do encourage memberships from a variety of professions. So we actually have over 5 different categories of members. The first among them are mentor member category. Now, these are people who are a lot senior in the field and in the discipline, who have many years of experience, and this is an invite-only category. We hope they join SAIP and share with us their wisdom and guide us as we move forward. The biggest chunk of members, as we see for now, will be the fellow members. Fellow members are those professional photographers who are practicing mainly architecture and interiors in their work, especially in the last 2 years at least. And they are also the ones who will, as we see, drive the society and its initiatives going ahead. Having said that, there can be many members who might not meet this particular criteria, but they are on their way to achieving that level in terms of their volumes of work or in terms of their profession. We have a category for them called the professional members. So these are for photographers who may not necessarily practice architecture or interiors as their prime genre, or those who may have just started out practicing architecture and interior photography or videography recently and may not have completed 2 years in the field yet. Likewise, we have another category of members called associate members. Associate members are for any professionals associated with the architecture, interior design disciplines at large. So, for example, what I mean by that is architects, interior designers, stylists, even people from the media. So publishers, writers, editors, even somebody like who's a contractor, who's an engineer, etc., can all become associate members at SAIP. We then have a category called trade members. Trade members are for those who are involved in, let's say, the manufacturing and the distribution or reselling of, let's say, camera equipment, of of renting out things that are used by photographers or by videographers, of offering ancillary services that help the professional and associate members in carrying out their works. And finally, we have a student member category as well. And this is open to not just students who are studying photography or those who are studying architecture or interior design. It's open to students across genres. Even somebody might be, let's say, be studying for the CA exam, somebody might be studying for engineering, but they might be interested in architecture and interior photography. And if they feel they have knowledge to gain and experiences to get while joining SAIP, we highly encourage them to do so and to join the student member category. Having said that, where the website, which is saipindia.org, is probably the best place where they can go and get information about these different member categories, what the membership fees are for each of them, what are the benefits of joining, and also there will be a link over there for the membership form to send in their application to join SAIP.
So that's really comprehensive and super encouraging to hear, Kunal. And obviously, people who are watching this will have seen the website come up at the bottom of the screen, and audio podcast listeners, you'll find the links in the show notes. Sebastian, could you talk a little bit about the events that SAIP has already done and what we could look forward to in the near future?
So with SAIP, the intention that we are a part of a community and to get people together was very clear as the basis. But what would keep SAIP alive and kicking, we realized, are the events. So it is about knowledge sharing, it is about experiences, it is about teaching, learning, etc., etc. So events were very, very important. So as a first step, we wanted to know, like, who are these people who are so-called architectural photographers and what do they do? That was the question that, okay, I heard your name, but I don't know what you do and what kind of a work do you really pull off. So that's how this first event came about, which was basically a presentation by each of the photographers about their work, about their thought, about what they want to do or want to talk about. So a 10-minute slot is given to the photographer. Please express yourself. And the first event was 10 photographers for 10 minutes, 10 presentations. It was received so well, and I mean, it's going to be there on YouTube and every other place. But when I look at it today, I would never have understood that particular photographer or that particular person in that light unless and until he or she had expressed himself that way. And that remained the basis, and we decided like this is something that we will continue every now and then. So the next one is supposed to come up soon, within the next month or so. And the second event we did was, okay, fine, we are photographers, we are shooting for architects, we shoot their work. Have we ever wondered what do they think, what do they need, how are they looking at what we are doing? And so we decided to do the second session, which was the POV or the point of view. Fantastic experience in the first session that we had, and it really left us with a lot of thinking as photographers as to how we are conducting ourselves and our business and how we are expressing the work of the architect. So it's wonderful. I mean, this kind of exchange is exactly what SAIP is all about. So we are looking at mentorship programs. We are looking at things that kind of make the knowledge base stronger for each of us. There is one more very, very beautiful event that we are looking at is like Meet the Artist, where we would actually take over Instagram and then land up at an artist's place or a creator's place and talk about their work so that the rest of the world can see. So this kind of a continuous activity is what we are looking at.
This is very exciting. I'm particularly excited about Meet the Artist, so you could see the artist in their own environment.
Yeah. I cannot agree more.
So since you mentioned the first 10 by 10 event, which I was really happy to be a part of, it was the first time I had seen other architectural photographers present their work from their perspective and explain their thought process. And that was so insightful. It was a really great experience.
And wasn't it wonderful, Sreenag? Wasn't it wonderful?
Yeah, it was definitely quite an experience because you got to see young architectural photographers with just a handful of years of experience, and then you see established pros with like 15, 20, 30 years of experience, and you get to see so much of, you get to understand so much of insight. You get to see basically what their thought process was, how they conceptualized a certain photo, certain image or a certain theme. It was really eye-opening.
So other than just involving photographers and architects, we would also like to look at video. We would like to look at technical skills. We would like to also involve manufacturers, accessories, and we would like to see demos from them as to how we can better our work. I would like to add one more thing. It is not just the architects and the photographers who are going to kind of do these presentations or share knowledge with us. We are also looking at people from different genres and about workflow, photography workflow, for example. That could be something that we can learn from everybody across the board. It need not be an architectural photographer. It could be even a wedding photographer who has got a beautiful accounting system that really helps us. We are also looking at camera manufacturers, lens. We are looking at new tripods. We are looking at drones. So we would like them to come to our society and do presentations, do demos, and things like that, where a young photographer can have a much rounded point of view as to what kind of equipments they can go for and what is the latest that is in the offering. So technology upgrades, knowledge upgrades. I think it's a ongoing process. It's a long one.
I think this is very, I'm saying this over and over again, that it's really exciting to hear what the society can actually do. But it really is. And especially when you talk about getting photographers to talk about their workflow, that's going to be a unique thing to watch, because every photographer has a different way of working. So we would definitely be able to learn from one another. So Kunal, now that we've heard about how SAIP came about and what's been happening so far to get the ball rolling with the events and knowledge sharing, how do people go back and watch what has already happened?
We also have an Instagram profile which is up and running. We'll share the links of both of them with you, so you can probably add them to the show notes or the description. We also have the SAIP website, which is at SAIP India, that's SAIPindia.org. If they go there, they'll get a good sense of what the aims and objectives of SAIP are, who are the current members, what are the different categories of membership, and what is the best way to contact SAIP for different things that they might be interested in. They can also check out an archive of our past events and of the works that our members do on our Instagram page, which is at saipsep.india.
Okay, I think that neatly wraps up everything that we need to talk about today. And thank you so much for being on this show. And thank you so much for actually putting in the hard work along with the rest of the board and the rest of the team to put the society together and essentially provide something that is really important for people in our community.
Thank you, Sreenag. Thank you. Thank you so much for being patient with us and for putting this together and for giving us the opportunity to say what we have to say about our society. And thank you really, really much.
Thank you, Sreenag, for having us here, and we do hope to get many of your listeners and viewers to SAIP and to SAIP events as well.
Well, that's our show for this week. You can find links to get in touch with my guests in the episode description below on YouTube, or if you're listening to the audio podcast, just swipe or tap over the cover art. You can watch other full episodes and curated playlists at everythingcomestogether.com. Please subscribe to Sreenag Pictures on YouTube, or you can listen to the audio podcast by subscribing to Everything Comes Together on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and leave a 5-star review. If you like this episode, please tell a friend about it and help get the word out about this show. The music for this podcast was composed by Aashray Harishankar from Escapist Music, post-production by Thiruvikraman Srinivasaraghavan, and production assistance by Abdul, Jeelani. Until we meet again with another fascinating guest, you can reach me on Instagram at Sreenag or at everythingcomestogether.com. Have a good day.